Is this? Okay, cool. So in case that happens, you hold this in until you wait.
All right, we are coming to you live from sunny Roseville, Minnesota today for the Off the Grid Midwest Championship, aka Fake Worlds 2021. This is going to be quite an event. My name is Neuropanzer. I will be providing commentary for you today. And we're already starting off in round one with a great matchup with some great Netrunner players. That's a theme that you're going to see throughout the whole weekend. Great Netrunner players are here to play. We have 3 different people who have won 4 total world championships here in Roseville, Minnesota to play Netrunner today. This particular matchup, we have Ben Mason versus Arash, and we have Sports versus Tau. So, stay tuned. This should be very interesting. There are a few different flavors of Tau running around, so one of the questions that I'll have as this match plays out is, which Tau came to play today? Is this an APOC Tau? Is this a Reg Tau? Is this a Tau that we don't know about yet? There are many options. And then Sports as well, there are a few options. Is this more of a Reg Sports, or is this the go fast, almost combo Sports that I think we've gotten used to in recent weeks? Those of you out in the stream, please let me know if you run into any audio issues. I am here with a new headset on a new computer, a new stream setup, a new mic entirely to me, so if you cannot hear me, if the quality is bad, you have to tell me, because I won't just inherently know. Alright. Starting off with a sprint from Sports. Mulligan not even taken for Tau, and we're already drawing cards on Sports side. And we're already shuffling back up. Sprint, one of those cards that I think possibly went under the radar, but is just a fantastic card for a deck like Sportsmetal that just wants to find the pieces, wants to find them early, does not want to spend money doing anything other than scoring agendas. So, one second. Okay, just making sure that the game state is visible from the stream. We have those of you who've dealt with streams before know that the range of vision is not exactly where you want it to be necessarily all the time. So just making sure that credits are visible, because one of the very important things in this sports matchup is how much money does sports have, because that really restricts what they're able to do. Tau, starting off by drawing cards. Already seeing some very interesting stuff in Tau's hand, seeing some boomerangs, seeing some diesel. This could be a spicy list. I'm very excited to see exactly what it is, exactly where it goes. Alright. Gonna see the first play from Tau that is not just drawing a card, that is a Riseki. The green orb has hit the table. And a Rashida Jahim is popped by Sportsmetal. That is obviously the exact type of start that Sports wants. Drawing those cards, making that money. Jamming in that remote. Man, getting an early Rashida pop as Sportsmetal really just, it almost feels like cheating, because it just puts you so far ahead. And like with sports, you don't need to be that far ahead to be very far ahead. Interesting, spamming out some cards. We have 2 cards in an iced remote. We have 1 next to them. That is a diesel from Tau. Drawing some cards. Making money. Okay, I'm gonna have to ask them to move stuff slightly farther on stream, just because can't quite see. A boomerang goes down, challenging that remote on click 4, I believe this is. And it is a gatekeeper. Gatekeeper has 2 subroutines. A boomerang will in fact take care of those 2 subroutines. Revealing both, but technically supposed to choose the order. Rashida gets trashed. And either not enough money or did not choose. Okay, does choose to trash the oh good lord, what's the name of that grid? Tranquility Home Grid. Tranquility Home Grid, also a very good card for sports, because and I feel like this is going to sound like a broken record by the end of the day, but cards and money are king when you are Sportsmetal. You can do just some very, very gross things with the cards that are in the purple card pool right now, kind of regardless of what your exact game plan is. Your goal is really just to draw enough cards and make enough money to do broken stuff and hold the runner off long enough. We see a red level clearance, so drawing, making the click back. Red level clearance again, drawing. Taking money with this RLC, so 2 clicks remaining. Hedge fund. And last click, putting up some defenses, defending R&D, worried about potentially some powerful multi-access, any number of things that could come from this Tau deck, but not worried about runner getting into HQ at the moment, it looks like, or at least is projecting that sense of tranquility, as it were. And honestly, that makes sense. Sports, oftentimes, HQ's not great. HQ's kind of the place that you sprint agendas out of. HQ's the place that you score agendas directly out of. You often don't need quite as much to defend HQ. Accessing HQ. It is a card that I cannot see on stream. Alright, we're going to have to... Apologies again to viewers. Just going to have to ask them after this game to shift where they are slightly to make it easier for us to see. Now we have an Anakam and a Beth Kilrain Chang on the table for Tau, so getting that drip coming in. Beth, not at its best against Sports. Sports often runs very, very low to the ground. Especially here, that hedge fund was largely just to power out a biotic to biotic out a mega pre-qualifier. Mega pre-qualifier only worth 1 point. So let's update that score. Gonna ask them to move the agendas a little closer in. Be right back. Okay, got some guidance on where cards are visible and not visible, so hopefully things will be a little easier to see there at home on the stream. Um, so we have a Deuces Wild, drawing cards, drawing some more cards. Tao really just looking to get through the deck, looking to find things. Another Rizeki goes down. So this is a pretty strong statement from Tao. This is a strong statement from Tao that if the game goes long, Tao is going to be very, very ahead because dripping in 2 credits every single turn. Another hedge fund comes down for Sports. Up to 9 credits, 2 ice on the board that are unresed, 1 in a remote. That is a pretty strong statement again from Sports that just, I'm going to be able to do something powerful very soon. You better, I mean, I know that Sports only has 1 point right now, but we're reaching the point of the game where Sports can start snapping off some interesting things. SFC goes down for Tau. Important tool to get accesses. But Tau really does need to start getting some of those accesses. Tau really needs to start getting accesses, ideally getting a Stargate down if there's a Stargate in this list, but I don't know if there is. We'll have to see. Just because Stargate, oftentimes against the Sport deck, it is more powerful to kill cards than it is to access cards. You oftentimes don't actually want the agendas in your score area. You just want them where the runner where the corp can't score them. So getting efficiency off of that overclock before access, going and getting a paperclip with that money just so that it's out there. Accessing a card that does not help. Running R&D. And we have a vanilla. That would be why so the deuces exposed that vanilla, which is why paperclip was the pull after Tau knew that they were through the ice on HQ. Okay. Another biotic. Another agenda. And that is a score of 3-0 for Sports. Now, Tau was set up with an R&D that's quite cheap to run, so I would not be shocked to see some runs come in on R&D. Again, accesses are very important against this Sports deck. Ooh. A conduit comes down. Conduit. So clicking for a credit, doing a conduit run. Conduit now has a counter. Now that is a dangerous place to be as Sports because you really do not want R&D to be cheap with a conduit. You don't want to give enough accesses to lose. Really, that's the way that you lose is just giving up enough accesses that the runner steals before you can score out, because you have ways to score out cheaply, but you do still need some amount of credits, you do still need some amount of cards, and you do still need to actually find the agenda. So Conduit threatening to put a close on this game relatively quickly, as medium type effects do, unless R&D becomes more expensive or unless Sports has some other way to stop this. I mean, at the moment, these two Rizekis, like, that is 2 Conduit runs every single turn that are dripping in. An upgrade goes down on the route of R&D. That smells like potentially a skunkworks to me. I think a CVS, even better. So CVS obviously purges the conduit. And that is a steal. The agenda stolen was a Hyperloop extension, which, if you are a Tau, Hyperloop extension is probably the last agenda that you want to steal. It gives Sports a lot of tempo. It gives Sports 3 credits, and then also the choice of either credits or cards. In this case, Sports went for cards, which is often a play. But Sports is back on 7, and 7 is enough to biotic a 3-2. So Sports threatening to be on 5 points. So, sees an RLC off of the top. Conduit up to 2 counters. CVS already thrown, like CVS already came out, did the thing that it was supposed to do, but CVS got traded basically for 1 conduit counter, which is probably a trade that Tau is pretty happy with. If you're Tau and you said you're gonna have to hit a CVS while you have conduit on the board and you're running R&D, the best case scenario is that it only takes away 1 counter. Now, here is another thing that Sports can do with that money. Throw down another ice on R&D, just slow the runner down enough that you can ideally get more cards, more agendas to score, and more ways to score them. Tense moment right now. Money dripping in for Tau at the start of the turn. Will be 3 credits, thanks to Beth. And we see a Boomerang. Boomerang breaks the drafter. Definitely don't want to let that fire. And then 1 credit to see 3 cards. That is a Vacheron, I believe, from the art. Obviously, stealing an agenda, you have to pause. If Sports wants to draw, then they need to draw, but taking money here to go back up to 6. Signals potentially a biotic in hand to me. Here is the 2nd card off the axis. Stays. 3rd card also stays. So, yep, that is a Vacheron. We see the die on it. Well, we see them putting a die on it, more accurately. So, Tau is at 1 plus 3 a few turns later, is I think the best way to say that. And Audacity comes out. Install Advanced Audacity, score. That will be 3 points. Or 2 points in addition. So, this is kind of the danger zone. This is the danger zone that Sports puts you in. Sports is up 5-1, 5-4 in like 3 turns, but this is exactly the problem with Sports from the runner's perspective is you just did the thing that you were supposed to do. You just stole the big agenda in their deck. But you are potentially just so far behind that you can't actually convert that into a win before Sports can score out because thanks to that audacity, Sports still has 8 credits. Still on biotic out a 3-2 money. So, this is a tough place to be. Oh, stealing an agenda off the conduit run. Hyperloop, it looks like, based on the fact that both money and cards were gained. Wow. Talk about a dig from Conduit. Let me check the exact amount of points in the runner's score area now. Okay, so that was a pretty big momentum shift. Pretty big momentum shift in the sense of I'm updating the score now. Runner is now on 6 points with 3 more coming down the pike in 3 turns. Now, again, just to point out, if Sports had Biotic 3-2 in hand, the game was still over at that point. Sports just gets into that position where they win so quickly that even a Conduit dig for 5 points is not enough sometimes. Now, of course, Sports wisely shoring up R&D here to make it so that it's harder to snag the last point that's needed out of R&D. Based on the way that these deck lists typically are, there should be one more Luminal. There should be probably a Luminal, probably a Hyperloop, and probably one other. I think there's one other Mega Pre based on what I see on the board right now. So I think there are 3 out of the 4 agendas win on the spot, but the other one is that last Vacheron, and that last Vacheron is just juice for Sports. It will not matter the rest of the game because the other Vacheron will tick down before that last Vacheron is important whatsoever. So Sports is free to basically ignore the Vacheron as long as it isn't in archives. And instead spend money resing ice. Hagen at the moment, a strength 4 barrier. 2 subroutines that you don't want to fire in this scenario. So, and it does fire, in fact. So that is exactly why you don't want it to fire, because not only does it end the run, it also kills Conduit, so your chances to get accesses really are dwindling now. And even the threat, because when Conduit's on the board, you can threaten, run R&D, force you to res your ice, and stay potentially too low to score, but that play's gone to a certain extent now. We see a Spin Doctor come down, drawing cards, shuffling, I would assume, Fast Advanced Tools back into R&D, but did not see exactly what got shuffled back. Just trying to maximize the chances of winning off of a single draw. Notably, this Gatekeeper is still end the run ice. With the amount of money that Tau currently has, Gatekeeper just says end the run. You get to do some other stuff, you get to draw some cards, but Gatekeeper does not. It is not an ice that the runner can currently get through. So there are potentially some interesting lines here where Sports can try to actually score out behind that Gatekeeper, but we'll see. That would be a bit of a spicy play, I think. However, can absolutely use that Gatekeeper to jam into a server with Tranquility to draw cards. Again, just drawing those cards, trying to find those fast advanced tools to get through. All it takes is one score for Sports. Any agenda other than the last Hyperloop extension, assuming there's a third, any agenda at this point for Sports will do it. They just need to score. Reaching a very, very tense portion of the game. Huh. Yep, counting down the points just to make sure that they understand exactly what the stakes are, exactly when Tau can win off of what axis is. Making the last decision here. Double advancing. Okay. So, maybe saying, I'm going to trust the Gatekeeper. I'm going to trust that you don't have enough time. You don't have enough money to get through this Gatekeeper. 5 credits for Tau. Also, crucially, going down to 4 credits here, Sports is. That denies a credit from Beth, which potentially matters. It potentially matters that there is only 5 credits to work with here, because I don't know what the breaker is, but you know, if you have to install Unity, that's, yep, SMC. Trashing a Rizeki. The green orb does not matter anymore. Going to search out the code gate breaker. And that is a Mega Pre. I thought that that might potentially have been the Vacheron, which would have been a nice bait there, but it is the Mega Pre. Tau wins that game at the last minute by finding an SMC, getting a code gate breaker, breaking a code gate, and there you are. A bold play from Sports, a bold play, but Tau ended up having it there. Now, in the run back, we have Precision Design versus Max. All right. Precision Design versus Max. Definitely another matchup that can get very interesting. Again, I have a similar question that I did about the Tau related to this Max. There are a few flavors of Max that we've seen recently. There is a Virus Max, there is an APOC Max, there's even kind of just a Reg Max. There are a number of different Maxes that could have shown up to play, and I think a question that I'm asking myself, but more importantly, I'm sure Ben is asking himself, is what Max am I going to face today? What Max is actually here to play? Because it matters quite a bit. The ways that you defend against Apocalypse are very different from the ways that you defend against. They have an overwhelming board state once they get Hive Mind down, and have enough counters that they just have an Amakua that breaks all of my ice very cheaply, and They have a tranquilizer that can de-res my ice. Just very, very different things that have to happen depending on what max you're playing against. PD tends to be a little more standard. Obviously, I haven't seen Ben's deck list. I don't know for sure, but PD tends to be a fairly standard, just rushy glaciery deck that has some rushy tendencies. A lot of tempo positive agendas to score, and then seamless launches, which mean that you get to never advance everything. Everything that you jam into your remote can potentially be a score, and even worse for the runner, can potentially be a score that not only doesn't cost money, but makes money. It's a tough deck to play against, but this should be interesting. PD starts off by icing a remote, jamming a card in the remote, and icing R&D. Fairly standard start. Max mills, paperclip, and moshing. Moshing makes me think potentially the APOC list, because moshing often is an APOC card. Accessing a Gatekeeper, that is good information to have. Gatekeeper, a very good ice for PD, because if it hits, it really supports your Glacier game plan, both by letting you find the tools that you want and letting you mitigate flood if you're currently flooded. Also, the turn that they get through it, it is a 6 strength code gate, and that sucks to break. I've had worse comes down. Max trying to go through the deck very quickly, find the tools needed to win this game. One click left for Max. Let's see. It is a sure gamble. Making that money. Money is important for any of these flavors of Max. If you're Apocalypse, you need enough money to break ice. And that's, so, importantly, and Arash rearranging the bin just to show Paperclip and Black Orchestra both in there. Those are both important cards for the two of them to acknowledge are there. We see a Rashida come down for PD. Just like in sports, it almost feels like cheating to have a Rashida pop on turn 2 because it is 3 cards, it is 3 money. That is just, it gives you the tools to really set up your game plan from there. And it'll be interesting to see, what is the game plan here from PD? Are we going to see an early agenda jam and rush? Are we going to see glaciering up? Are we going to see, like, you know, the risk of going for an agenda super early against a deck that could be on APOC is you could get APOC'd. And then you lose that early score, which the early score is very important for PD because the early score is always tempo positive. We see an upgrade go down onto R&D. I believe, looking at the hand, that was a Chrysium grid, which is good APOC protection. And we see a card jammed into the remote. Could easily be an agenda, could easily be an upgrade like a CVS. Could also be an upgrade like Tranquility Home Grid to help set up tempo. Oh, and that is an Off-World Office scored from hand. That is a big snipe for Max because Off-World Office is an excellent first agenda to score if you're PD. You really want to be scoring those out of hand. You really want to be, or not out of hand, but out of the remote. You want that tempo in your favor. And that's what scoring an Off-World Office does for you, but Max just sniped it. Max getting a little bit bold, saying, I don't think you can stop me on this remote. I'm going to dirty laundry it. I have enough money to pull something out of the bin and break. It is a Gatekeeper. That's expensive to break, but you can. Costs you 9 to get through, and then you get 5 back at the end of the run. However, that does mean you have only enough to kill the Mangarm Skunkworks and go to 0, and then back up to 5. That is a trade-off that Max decides is worth it, which I 100% agree with. Mangarm Skunkworks just multiplies the efficacy of whatever's on the remote. Last click, throwing down a daily cast, trying to keep that money dripping in. It is tough to keep up with PD economically because they are just able to jam out of the remote and force you to break their ice again and again and again very effectively. So you really need to try to keep up with them economically if you can. Ice up, ice goes on to HQ. Max has actually had some real success disrupting HQ already this game, trying to shut that off. One of the important things to note, one of the reasons that HQ is getting shut off right now, there is an Anedic Void in HQ. And Anedic Void, obviously it's even better with Skunkworks, but without Skunkworks, still, it is a strong enough card that you can potentially just win the game off of it as PD. You really want to protect that. Make sure that the runner doesn't get to just trash it for 1 credit total. You want to make them run through that whole server, maybe twice, to get a chance to trash it. Liberated comes down. Again, trying to keep up economically. So far, Max has done a good job keeping up economically. He's had to break some expensive ice, has had to trash some high impact cards, but still keeping up with the money. The Max Mills have been kind in terms of putting the econ into Max's hand, which is important. Card drawn for PD. We see a card jammed into the remote and an ice go on. And again, we're reaching the point of the game where things start to actually feel a little bit tricky if you're the runner, because this could be an agenda. This could be an agenda and an ice that it costs you 5 credits to break. And if that's the case, you have to think pretty hard whether you're going to try to disrupt the score or not. Max says, nope, not disrupting the score. I'm just going to take the money off my liberated, and I'm going to overclock into R&D. Overclock into R&D because even if you don't pay for the ice, you probably get to pay for trashing whatever the upgrade is. The upgrade is, in fact, a Chrysium. The overclock goes directly into trashing that Chrysium, and we see a Tranquility Home Grid off of R&D. Declines to trash. Thinks that that is a good card for Ben to draw right now, and sure enough, there is already a Tranquility Home Grid in the remote, so the redundant one is a little less powerful, but still potentially impactful, because having a Tranquility Home Grid in this remote just over the course of a whole game can make so much money. 2 more cards. We have officially reached Clown Car status in Remote 1. And this is PD just playing the game as they want to. We have the money. We have this remote stacked up. We have the ice. So it's going to be pretty annoying to get through over and over for Max. At this point, if you're Max, you are probably starting to think, do I just blow up the board? If that's what your game plan is. Runs HQ. Has to pay to break a full gatekeeper to get through. No res on R&D. And runs archives. There we go. The planet has been hacked. The world has been blown up. All of PD's board is in the trash. Daily Cast has been flipped over even though it has money on it. It's all gone. It is gone. Even that Black Orchestra, just dead, gone, forever. And PD immediately rebuilds with a remote and ice on R&D. Well, 1 APOC has happened, and that does translate into points for Max. That is a Luminal out of the bin. So PD was in fact trying to score out of that double ice Clown Car server. Another Liberated comes down. Another Liberated comes down, money's being taken off of it, just keeping up economically because PD can rebuild very quickly to the point where you might want to APOC again, and you are going to need money to do that. Because you're going to have to pull things out of the bin once again to break ice. You're going to have to break that ice. And this is where having that second Tranquility Home Grid actually comes handy for Ben. Still money dripping in from Tranquility Home Grid, despite the fact that one of them got trashed directly into the bin from APOC. And once again, PD threatening a potential score here. Max needs to think, is this a time to challenge the remote? Looking for tools to potentially either challenge the remote or do whatever else is in their game plan. Running R&D. We see a magnet on R&D. That is 6 to break. No agenda off of R&D. We see a fermenter come down. Interesting. This does not appear to be the virus max list. This is just a fermenter. This is just red Zeki, as we might call it. It is the purple orb dripping in credits for you turn after turn. Just a nice little battery of money for when you need it. And PD did not, in fact, have an agenda to score this turn. Does have a advanced assembly lines. Oh, sorry, this is the runner's turn still. No. Yeah, okay. Installing ice, trashing the gatekeeper that's already been used. Advanced assembly line is one of those fantastic cards with Tranquility Home Grid, just because, as you see here, you jam, you get the install elsewhere, and then you get another trigger off of Tranquility Home Grid. Just a fantastic piece of synergy. Now, we're in a somewhat similar situation now. We've got a double iced remote with potentially a defensive upgrade. We've got no ice on HQ, one ice on R&D. And I think the question now, if you're Max, interesting. Out of the Ashes has been popped. Runs HQ. CVS. Oh my god, that is a hit. Hits CVS to pop the fermenter. Fermenter will no longer make money at the start of the turn the way that Max really wanted it to, really hoping that that would be a big hit of money before an APOC. Still has enough to do the APOC, but left without much money after the APOC. And another Black Orchestra gets flipped over. The third one is already in the bin, so gatekeepers don't just fire from here on out, but it will cost 3 the next time, once again. Max is out of stack. There are no more cards in Max's deck. Everything from here on out has to be labor rights back in or already in the hand. And PD rebuilds the remote. Max starts off just with liberated accounts. Just recover economically. Need money to be able to do anything. And here we have it, the classic PD seamless score a Cyberdeck sandbox. That is 2 points for PD. a purge, money, and returning a card to HQ. We have a labor rights for Stargates. For liberated Stargate and labor rights. So, labor rights for labor rights, pretty obvious. At the moment, you're out of your stack. There is not much that you can do. Labor rights will get you some tools back. Liberated, just putting a real premium on making sure that econ is there for you in a long term. Makes sense. PD only on 2 points. You can assume that there are enough turns left that a liberated probably matters. And then obviously the Stargate. You want to punish that open R&D. And another way to punish just open servers, a way to punish the fact that you have already pulled off 2 APOCs. Omar is on the board. Max has turned into Omar. Omar making it easy to get into servers. We see a defensive upgrade go on to R&D, and we see 2 cards jammed in the remote. I don't know what this card in R&D is, but there is a possibility that it is a Chrysium. Which, yep, it is in fact a Chrysium. The reason for that is just it shuts off the possibility of an APOC. Oh, and that is game. I believe Max scored an agenda that I missed somehow. Apologies for that. Again, the tables are quite small here. The range of vision is quite small, so that is 7 points for the runner. And congratulations to both Arash and Ben. That is a split in round 1. Some pretty good games to start off this OTG Midwest Fake Nats Fake Worlds Championship. I think you can probably expect to see a decent bit of the decks that you saw in this round for the rest of the day. PD and Sports especially, those I think are a bit of the boogeyman decks. You should expect to see most players either playing those or having a strong plan for those in their 40 or 45. As you saw, this max deck clearly teched for both, in the sense of you have APOC to help you against the PD decks, as you saw here. If you can blow up their board, that does wonders. Even with the Out of the Ashes, to gain a quick one, you have to do something like trash a Chrysium before you fire off the APOC. But on the other side, there is also all of that tech that would be great against sports, like your Max. You have Stargate. You can find Stargate fast. You can start Stargating them very quickly. Overclock to get all of those bin breakers out of the bin. Yeah, this Max list seems pretty tuned for the meta. And that Tau list, obviously, I mean, we saw how powerful it can be just to get conduits. Just get conduit down, get conduit accesses. Once conduit was down, that was pretty much the entire game plan for that Tau list, and it worked. It worked like a charm. Did exactly what it needed to do. Alright, that is the end of this round on table 1. Again, I am Nerapantser, and thank you for joining me for round 1. I'm going to take a quick break between this round and next round. We should be back in about 20 minutes. 20 minutes is end of the round, so let's say probably back in 25 minutes or so. We are not quite back yet, but just checking in. Round 1 has completed. All of the results are in. Results from round 1, a lot of sweeps in round 1. Like, out of 25 tables, I'm only seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, only 6 splits in that first round. I don't think people are too for wanting this early. I think this is just a lot of sweeps in the first round. So I'm not an expert on tournament math, but what I would say is I expect this to lead to some fireworks later in the day because a lot of people are going to be in contention if this keeps up. A lot of people near the point thresholds. Should be interesting. Some notable wins, some notable people who swept in round 1 include Kat Shen went 2-0 that round. 3-time running OTG champion Ajar also swept that first round. Aaron Andrews swept that first round. Cranked swept that first round. Spags swept that first round. Dan Dargenio swept the first round. CTZ swept the first round against the current reigning world champion. There are a lot. There are a lot of sweeps in that first round. Stay tuned. We're going to get a matchup between some great players in this next round. Another notable thing I would like to point out before we start in round 2, there is one Apex in the field today, and Apex is currently 1-0. That's right, Apex is currently undefeated in a field that includes 3 world champions. That's all for now. And we are back with the action at the Off the Grid Championships / Fake Worlds. I am Neuropanther coming to you with round 2 from sunny Roseville, Minnesota, where it is like 85 frickin' degrees right now. Not inside though, there's AC, that's fine. We have an interesting matchup this round. So we have Melvin on the right. Let me switch sides for them so that they're on the correct side. Nope, that's not. Swap seats, there we go. Okay. Shoot. Alright, 1 second. Figuring out the correct settings on the stream here. One moment. Alright, there we are. So, we are starting off with the classic matchup of PD versus Adam. Adam, obviously, always one of those slightly rogue picks that always manages to still be good in just about any meta, ever since Find the Truth was printed. Just, Adam offers a very different set of challenges than you'll face against many runners. Having that much multi-access that quickly on HQ in particular can be tough for decks to deal with. It'll be interesting to see how Melvin handles that as PD, because as we saw in the previous round, PD at certain points in the game doesn't care about HQ that much because you just want to jam things in the remote and you want to protect R&D and you want to score. But early in the game is not one of those points where you don't care about what's in HQ and whether the runner's accessing it. You really do still at that point care. So let's see how this goes. Another interesting thing with Adam, obviously, Adam is a deck that has 25 influence from all 3 main factions. You have your Adam cards, you have 25 influence to spend. For that reason, you oftentimes see some pretty interesting influence splits coming out of Adam lists. And I, for one, am very interested to see where exactly is that influence, what exactly is the influence in this Adam, and what is it doing. And I know that that's something Melvin's going to have to figure out on the fly too. PD at this point is a pretty known quantity. People know, for the most part, what you're going to do if you're PD. They know what ice to expect, they know what agendas to expect, they know the play patterns. Adam can be a little more of an unknown quantity just because of that sheer, I have 25 influence, I can spend however I want factor. And they are off. Adam is taking a mulligan. PD is happy with the hand, but just waiting for the mulligan to come in. And here we are. Turn 1. PD draws for the turn. Examines the exact directives that are in play. I'm actually going to take a closer look because I don't recognize these alt arts. I'll just confirm what the 3 directives are. So for those who are not familiar with those alt arts on Adam's side for me, these are, I would say, the standard 3 that you see most of the time in Adam, in modern lists, which are You have safety first, lower hand size, but you draw cards at the end of the turn if you're not at your max hand size. Hand size probably not a huge deal against this PD list. PD lists typically are not running damage. They typically are not running ways to tax your hand effectively. So neutralize all threats can just be, or sorry, safety first can just be a card draw engine. There is also find the truth to peek the top card of R&D whenever you make successful runs, and ideally not to give game losses for failing to reveal information. That is always a possibility. And then neutralize all threats, which, as we were talking about, that early multi-access into HQ, we're already seeing that in play. Already seeing that early multi-access on HQ into play because PD's first ice is not on the remote, it is not on R&D, it is in HQ. Deuce's Wild drawing 2 cards. One of them was a sure gamble, one of them was a card that unfortunately, thanks to the glare, we were not able to see. That is another sure gamble, so Adam starting off with quite a bit of money, but PD also starting off with quite a bit of money. That early hedge fund and a Rozeki comes down for Adam, so Rozeki, always such a crucial card against PD because PD likes winning the long game. PD likes having a very long time to just jam cards in the remote, get Tranquility Home Grid triggers, bait you into running when you're not supposed to run, and Rozeki says, okay, fine, but I get a credit every single one of those turns. Here is a Spin Doctor, already off to the races for PD. Probably don't love popping a Spin Doctor this early, but there are valid targets to shuffle back. You know, you have the Hedge Fund. Hedge Fund is always a nice one to get back as PD. And we have an Ice on the remote to end the turn for PD. Starting to get that remote set up. You really want that strong remote as PD, especially against Adam where, again, there are 25 influence. There is a possibility that you could see an APOC out of Adam, but it's very unlikely. You rarely see that. Double Ice on the remote already. Threatening to drop an agenda in there and start scoring out very quickly, PD is. Also, double ice is important for PD at the moment because one of the cards that Adam has in the card pool is Logic Bomb. Logic Bomb is a good way to get through a single iced remote early in the game and challenge some of those cards that you think might be early scores. We're seeing an emergent creativity, getting a paperclip out. Paperclip, of course, going to be the choice here. Deuce's Wild exposed a Hagen on HQ. So if you want to start getting those accesses into HQ, you want to start taking advantage of your natural multi-access on HQ, that is the way that you do it. You get a paperclip down, you start slamming into that Hagen. We have an overclock coming in. That looked like a rip from HQ. Let me make sure I know what that was. That was, in fact, a double rip from HQ. That is a Cyberdeck Sandbox and a GFI. Obviously, a very strong start to the game for Adam. This is exactly what Adam can do. Just get those early accesses, get that early power, steal those early agendas. Already up 4-0. And PD's barely even started the game at this point. And Adam is just continuing to draw into money cards. Jackson trashed, not popped, not used another Jackson. So Melvin desperately drawing for what he needs to win this game. Jackson now getting used to shuffle back a hedge fund and a spin doctor. Sorry, calling him Jackson. Shuffle back a spin doctor and a hedge fund. And a new card goes down into the remote, and an ice goes onto R&D. So this seems like a very strong signal to me from Melvin that there's nothing in HQ. So either that's true, or Melvin wants the runner to think that that's true. Because it's an easy bluff to call at this point. 7 credits, all you need is a few credits to pay for Hagen. Okay. So seeing the top card of R&D, nothing that matters. At least not yet. That is a career fair to throw down a daily casts. Keep that money ticking in as Adam. So important, as we talked about against PD, because if PD has their way, they can just grind you out of credits in the long game. None of this ice rezzed yet for Melvin. Just looking to get things online at the moment. A brain chip is drawn to end the turn for Adam. I need to make sure I figure out what happened there. I believe that may have been a concession, or it may have been accessing agendas. Let me check. Okay, so what that was, the Agasha believed that there was a brain chip down on the board, and for several turns had been playing as if there was a brain chip down on the board, and therefore with a much larger hand size than he actually had. So, he scooped the game to Melvin because of illegal board state for several turns. So, an unfortunate way for that game to end. Definitely not the ideal ending that you want to see out of the games, but good show of sportsmanship to say, you know, that is, I was not playing with illegal board state for several turns and resolving it without even calling the judge. So that's, yeah, unfortunate for the Adam player. Definitely just something to keep an eye on in future rounds. But in the meantime, we have what should be a very interesting matchup here. We have AgInfusion. This is, I don't know about those of you in the chat right now, those of you watching at home. I have not seen AgInfusion at an event that I've been watching. And yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen AgInfusion. I am excited to see AgInfusion. I honestly don't even know what AgInfusion does these days. Obviously, the AgInfusion ID ability, for those not familiar with it, extremely strong ID ability. You get to trash unresed ice to just yank the runner out of a run, throw them onto a different server, and if there's res ice, force them to encounter that resed ice on the outside. You can make some very strong plays with AgInfusion. You have 17 influence. It's a very strong ID ability. But Jinteki in general has fallen off lately, and we're playing against one of the strongest runners in Standard in 419. This should be an interesting matchup. I'm excited to see how AgInfusion tries to navigate around the fact that you have all of this ice, but you don't have that much money and you have to either pay money or show 419 what this ice is. Already, we're seeing that credit denial come into play, not revealing what the ice on HQ is. More important to keep that information secret than it is to have that credit. And Melvin immediately starts off with a dirty laundry. Does not see anything he gets to keep. I already see a green orb in Melvin's hand. I imagine we'll see that come down in the near future. But drawing a card first. Yep, and starting off with a strong econ plan for Melvin. We have the green orb, we have the daily casts, and we're going to have money just ticking in over the course of the next 4 turns and the rest of the game. Cards drawn for AgInfusion. Money made for AgInfusion. And it is back to 419. Drawing cards. Running R&D. Nothing on R&D that Melvin gets to keep. Continues drawing cards, just trying to set up the board state, and that is a big early find for 419. Turning wheel oftentimes as 419 is the way that you ultimately close out a game. You build up counters over the course of a long game, and then you use them. And the way that it interacts specifically with AgInfusion is pretty strong for 419 because turning wheel rather, you don't have to use the counters from turning wheel until after you're at the point where AgInfusion gets to use their ability. So you don't have to commit to it and then get Nisei countered, as it were. Unless they actually have a Nisei scored. And that is a large amount of money coming out on Melvin's side. That is $7 for an Amina. That is a Spin Doctor Rezzed, trying to gain that tempo on AgInfusion's side. Another card goes into the remote. An upgrade goes into the remote. It is not revealed. And the money from the reveal gained back for another card going. So 2 upgrades in that remote with that Spin Doctor. Is that a Maingarm Skunkworks and an Anedic Void? We don't know. It certainly could be, though. And if it is, that combination is very, very painful to get through. Melvin runs HQ. First Ice Res is a doozy, spending all 8 credits on an Anansi. Melvin draws a card off of Anansi. Well, will after the arrange the top 5 cards. This is a full fire from Anansi. This is every single bit of the bad thing that can happen from Anansi happening to Melvin right now. Hopefully nothing important in HQ, or in the grip rather, for the runner, because some bad stuff's about to happen to those cards. That is a political operative. That is not a card you want to lose. I'm going to go look what went into the bin to make sure I understand if there are any breakers or things like that that were lost. Okay, update. The answer is no. Probably the most important hit off of the Anansi net damage was a Boomerang in Melvin's hand. Notably, Boomerang, a card that cannot beat Anansi. And now, with every single server having ice up on it, we have reached the point where things get a little awkward for 419. They get awkward because if you run any server you have to break Anansi. You can't dirty laundry. You can't. I doubt this. I doubt this deck is on red team, but just there are so many things that you can't do that are run based that you probably want to do if you're 419 because you have to be able to break Anansi. And because of this, AgInfusion just saying, I don't care know that this is a Cyberdeck sandbox. I'm jamming it in the remote. What are you gonna do? Run through Anansi again? Yeah. A bold play for sure, just because AgInfusion can only drain one click from you. You have to run like a Melvin is on enough cards that in theory you could tank the Anansi again and run into that remote. But there is no res on R&D. Counter goes onto Turning Wheel. So choosing to save the AgInfusion ability for another server, potentially another turn. Now let's see. We know that there is a Cyberdeck sandbox here. Do we have the boop into the Anansi? We do, maybe. Contemplating, really thinking this one over. You have a free, well, it's not free. You have an Anansi Fire here if you want it, but you have to give up the ice on this server. You have to give up the sandbox, and you probably have to give up everything that is in that remote. Though not necessarily, you have enough money to res a Skunkworks if a Skunkworks is in there, and that will force, just because of the number of clicks left in Melvin's turn, will not be able to trash everything that's in the server. We'll have to pay to access and take that agenda. And sure enough, that is the trade-off that's made. Anansi will get a full fire once more. Getting to rearrange, getting to just get a free precognition here. Really set up the next few turns. Make sure that R&D is safe as you're trying to get enough money to score, as you're trying to get enough money to set up your game plan, potentially pulling money to the top, drawing a card to gain that tempo, dealing 4 net damage total. Not enough money to fire a snare here, but, you know, that would really be the icing on top of the cake, wouldn't it? And here's the access. It is a magnet. So, good knowledge to have. That Amina is very good against magnet. And that is an Anetic Void resed in the remote. The run will be ended. 2 cards from HQ going into the trash. Now that's interesting. AgInfusion really, for that play to be sustainable, AgInfusion really needs to get an ice that is resable on the remote, because you will not have cards or money to just Anetic Void forever. There is no ice on this remote. Melvin can run 4 times a turn, in theory. Now, obviously, having an ice on the remote means it is now harder for Melvin to run in. Melvin has to tank an Anansi for a 3rd time this game if he wants to get into that remote with Void currently active. Melvin is probably a braver man than I am, but I'm not sure that that's a trade he wants to make. Now, Class Act makes that a bit easier. Class Act helps draw up. Beginning the turn with 2 credits. Oh, and here we have a seamless launch. And we have a second seamless launch. Oh my god. Well, that makes perfect sense. I think I had the question of, alright, you have these 2 credits, what does that do for you? What it does with 2 seamless launches is it scores an entire Cyberdeck sandbox, get you back up to 4 credits with an active Anetic Void, with an active Anansi, with ice on every server to turn into Anansi. This is definitely looking like a better position for AgInfusion than I thought it might be at the start of this turn. Ultimately gains money off of that exchange. And here is part of the power of those Anansi subroutines. I would be shocked. Well, it's certainly possible, but I would be a bit surprised if Agasha just naturally had both seamless launches. That is a play that you make when you have knowledge that you're going to have both seamless launches to use. Very well navigated by AgInfusion. So up 2-0, I should update that score. Now, Melvin has a second Rozeki out. As we've discussed already, I think in 3 out of the 4 games we've seen on stream, we've seen the green orb. We've seen the very very generous drip economy in play of Rozeki. Rozeki just in games that go long provides you so much money. Rozeki is just an absolute boatload of cash in the long term. AgInfusion is, speaking of money, back up to 5 credits, enough to play a hedge fund, enough to res some threatening ice, or just enough to score an agenda without any seamless launches, potentially res another ice, potentially throw into an Anansi again. AgInfusion at the point where they are definitely threatening a score soon. Melvin spending the time to mutual favor. This is why mutual favor is a very powerful card. Without even running, it is still absolute worst case scenario a special order, which is what it is here. Just ordering up that Begalter, spending a full click to get Begalter into play. Do not get the discount of the click that you would if you had a successful run, but it is still worth it to get that Begalter on the board so that you can run servers and be able to break a Nazi. It isn't cheap to break a Nazi, but you can now. You have the tools. But as we discussed, AgInfusion is now at the point where just breaking Anansi is not enough. You have to break Anansi, and then you have to break a second ice, and then you have to get through an Edict Void. This might be a difficult score to challenge. AgInfusion is going to go poor after they do, unless this is another Cyberdex, or an off-world office or something like that, but this is potentially a difficult agenda to steal from the remote for 419. Let's see what Melvin does. Money drips in. More money comes in from Sure Gamble. That is a dirty laundry. Into R&D. Dirty laundry into R&D. That is an access. That is a counter on turning wheel. And it is 5 credits coming in. At least 1 click left. I did not catch it. Okay. And that is the end of the turn. So AgInfusion can spend 3 clicks and 3 credits to score what is presumably a 4-2. And that is the case. I'm going to figure out what that 4-2 was. Oh, nope, okay. 8 credits just came in. That was, in fact, the second sandbox. That's a bit of a blowout. Having 2 scored sandbox, very, very powerful. Because one of the weaknesses of this AgInfusion deck is how poor you can get. But if you can click for 8 every single turn, you don't get that poor. You are able to res a lot of ice that way. 419 has a moment, certainly has a bit of a window here on almost 20 credits. Let's see where those 20 credits go. Certainly would like to clear out the remote if possible. It's going to be very, very challenging to score a 5-3, which AgInfusion can really threaten to push right now. Running into a Nazi, just running into a Nazi normally, spends net 5, is going to see almost the whole hand here, seeing 3 cards from HQ. Does find a Nisei Mark II to steal, because although it doesn't win, it puts you in a commanding position when you find any agenda if you're AgInfusion. So that is a Nisei Mark II stolen out of HQ. Melvin's still down 4-2. Down 4-2 against an AgInfusion with a lot of money. A 5-3, if a 5-3 gets jammed, still a bit difficult to actually challenge it. And does not have the full rig down. That is a Penny's Haver that comes down. AgInfusion draws, draws, and draws. Looking for that 5-3, I have to think. And now we have a Hanze review as well, just to really shore up on money. Threaten to res all of this ice, which, knowing AgInfusion, is probably nasty. Melvin. What is the answer for 419? Where does 419 go from here? Ah. AgInfusion resing in the remote. Likely to shut off the possibility of a falsified credentials. Actually, just to gain money, right? Right, you can res and pop CVS for net 5 credits when you have 2 Cyberdeck Sandbox scored, which gives you 8 of the 12 credits you need to res Chiashi. Melvin has the breaker and has the money to break Chiashi, but probably does not feel good about it. And there is nothing on R&D for Melvin's troubles. Man, you are really just seeing the power of double Cyberdeck Sandbox here. 5 credits out of nowhere, 8 credits every time you purge. Just a very, very strong economic position at the moment for this AgInfusion list. Has resed 20 credits worth of ice. Still has 9, now 13 in the pool. Very, very powerful. At this point, probably just wants to find that 5-3 and try to push it. You have to think. Also, this Hansei review. What do you care if you throw cards into archives at the moment? There's a CVS in archives. If the runner runs archives, you make $8. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Bit of a pause here. Clarifying the board state. Looking through archives at the face-ups. Oh no, actually ran archives, it looks like. That's 8 credits going back into AgInfusion's pool. So AgInfusion effectively has infinite money at the moment. Can res like 2 Chiashis and basically not sweat it. This is a bit of a tough position for Melvin for sure. Have to find these agendas, but where are you going to find them from? AgInfusion can just... I mean, heck, can even throw down extra ice if they want to. Melvin does get a class act draw. Gets to is between two cards. Here is a diversion of funds. Try to limit some of that money. You know, keep AgInfusion off of 22 credits. Very important threshold. It does also give a counter on Turning Wheel and a Penner Shaver credit, so that's nice. Honestly, diversion of funds there might have just been a way to recoup the money from that run, both from Penny Shaver and from stealing the 5 credits, so that you have a Turning Wheel counter for a desperate last dig. Because that really seems like what we're getting to. We are getting close to the point of desperation for Melvin. See, that is a second diversion of funds, and the Corp is still above 20 credits. AgInfusion is so ridiculously rich. But Melvin does have the tools to get enough accesses to make this a little bit gross. So let's see. And we have an install without a reveal, an advance, and an advance. This certainly seems to signal I'm going to win the game now. It's going to be very difficult for Melvin to actually get into this remote at all, much less get into the remote and be able to break an Edict Void and then get back in. Or rather, let an Edict Void fire and then get back in. There are 18 credits on the side of... Interesting. Okay, so starts off by letting Melvin through and then throwing Melvin into Chiashi. Just to bankrupt Melvin. Melvin choosing to see 2 cards. One of them is an Obokata protocol. Melvin is on 5 now. Only needs 1 agenda to win. Does Melvin have enough time, enough money, enough clicks to make anything out of this 5 points? That is the real question at this point, because AgInfusion still has 18 credits. And enough cards in HQ to fire an Edict Void at least once. Melvin chooses to draw, hoping that this is an NGO front rather than agenda, I imagine. That is a bet that does not... Well, it pays off in the sense of the game is not over. However, purges are now worth 12 credits. You've heard of double Cyberdeck Sandbox. You've seen double Cyberdeck Sandbox, but you have the rare privilege of seeing triple Cyberdeck Sandbox today. Oh. That said, this does put Melvin in the position of only needing to steal 1 agenda of any sort for the rest of the game. So Melvin can... Now, it's not going to be easy to get these counters, but if Melvin correctly sniffs out the correct server at the correct time, all it takes is 1 access to win for Melvin. Melvin just needs to make enough money to make that happen. And that's why we're seeing Shardy Ambleton down. That's why we're seeing Rizeki drip in so much money that AgInfusion cannot even fit it on the ID. Diesel, definitely a way to try to keep your cards up if you need to steal an Obokata. Also just dig for potential answers. We have an install advance on the remote, once again threatening the win. Threatening the win in a number of ways. Yep, okay, so this, we now all know that this is a Nisei Mark II. The win is, in fact, in the remote for either player. Melvin, if he can get in, and Agasha, if Melvin cannot get in. We have the outer ice throwing Melvin into HQ, signaling there is nothing in HQ for you. Spend your 5 credits, get into the server, the game's over for you. Melvin has 1 click remaining, I believe. Melvin can run back to the remote, but the remote will not get there. There are 2 cards in HQ. Agasha can just end the run on any remote run. So, where are the agendas, is now the question. There are 2 counters on turning wheel, going to R&D, seeing 2 cards. Not there. Oh, wow. Okay, no, I was wrong. We couldn't see it, but that was... Let me figure out what the heck just happened. Okay, just confirmed with the players. It was just out of frame for us, but there was, in fact, a Nisei Mark II on top of R&D on that R&D run. So the very last possible click, the very last possible run, almost the very last possible card, Melvin pulls it out. So that is 2-0 for Melvin in this round. Very strong showing for Melvin. Melvin, a local area, a local Roseville area player, so seeing some of the locals come out here and defend their turf, very, very fun to see. Great round for Melvin. Congratulations to him. Overall, good games as well. That AgInfusion game was a nail biter. Certainly looked like AgInfusion was way ahead just with those sandboxes, but this is why 419 is one of the strongest runners in the meta. You can claw out those accesses. You have the exposed tools to make the correct plays at the correct time to have all the knowledge that you need. Or, as we saw in AgInfusion, in the early game, slow them down. Because obviously at the end of the game, that 1 credit didn't matter much, but in the early game, that credit was pretty important in a few places. Forced AgInfusion to go down to 1, or go down to 2, or go down to 0. Slowed them down just long enough to get enough accesses to win. Very well played by Melvin. That is it for round 2 here from Roseville, Minnesota, in the game center, in the center of the state, in the center of the room. This, there's quite a bit of time left in this round, so I'm going to put a BRB up. I don't actually know when the round ends. Oh, yeah, okay, there's lunch break now. So we will be back in a little over an hour. You have plenty of time to just chill, come back, watch some net, but yeah, we'll be back.